Thank you for staying with us. Now, investors are waiting to hear what President Cyril Ramaphosa has to say. The 12J Association says, well, of course, it wants to extend Section 12J investments, especially as the country looks for ways to recover from the crippling economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, 12J investments have proven to be an effective way to create jobs, boost small and medium enterprises, including encouraging transformation. Now, the association's chairman, that's Dino Zuccollo, joins us now to expand on this. Mr. Zuccollo, thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about this. I mean, you are of the notion that the president should at least prioritizing an announcement of an extension to the Section 12J tax incentive initiative. Why should this be a priority from your perspective?
Morning, Tomato, and thanks for having me. Let's start at the beginning. So Section 12J is a piece of South Africa's Income Tax Act that was brought in 2009 with the stated intention of creating jobs and boosting the economy. It was only in 2015 when it really started to gain traction after Treasury and SARS made some favorable changes to the law. And since then, Section 12J has made an incredible economic impact on South Africa. The industry has raised about 10 billion rand and spent more than 5.5 billion rand into 360 SMMEs around South Africa. And in that process, we believe that the industry has created about 10,500 jobs at a time, in my view, in South Africa, where creating jobs is fantastic, but actually just saving and protecting jobs that are already there is actually the imperative. Now, Section 12J, as you mentioned, is subject to what's called a sunset clause, which provides that in June of this year, the legislation will end unless there's some form of positive action by the President or by National Treasury or the Finance Minister. And we believe, if you take a look at not only the amount of jobs that have been created, the amount of SMMEs that have been invested into, and that's everywhere from Barberton to Elsies Rivier, we believe that Section 12J really is due an extension before it ends in June of this year.
You know, how has been the impact of, this pandemic to small, medium enterprises? Because on different occasions right here on ENC and even on the show, when we spoke to them, they weren't even particularly pleased with the relief grant. There was a lot of mess-up, and they feel that it also contributed to the downfall of many businesses, even having to close down.
It's been very tough, in honesty. About 50% of 12J investments have gone into hotels, as an example. And hotels, as we all know, are one of the hardest hit industries by the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, we spoke and we put out to the press yesterday an example of a hotel, the Mdluli Safari Lodge, which is in the western side of the Kruger National Park, that has been such a fantastic success story for Section 12J. There you've got local members of the local community who've been uplifted, employed and empowered as a consequence of 12J investments. Now, the issue is that obviously through the pandemic, hotels were closed, and even now, international tourism is muted. That's just one example. There are all sorts of industries around the country, for example, student accommodation, solar and renewable energy, schools and so on, all of whom in some form and way and shape have had an impact as a result of COVID-19. But then that's what you've got to ask yourself isn't that exactly the intention of a tax incentive, which is to promote South Africans investing money into projects that they otherwise might not have done because things like COVID have made it increasingly difficult. And that's not even considering the fact that, unfortunately, many South Africans are taking their money offshore at the moment because they perceive safe haven investments in places like the US and the UK to be lower risk than here in South Africa.
So let's talk about that then, some of the benefits of the tax incentive and as far as transformation is concerned. Because, I mean, Dino, a lot of, industry leaders have said it's not going to be as easy as just opening up industry. We have to rebuild, industry.
Correct. And, from my perspective, jobs is the ultimate goal, because with sustainable employment comes proper inclusive growth, as the President has spoken about on numerous occasions. And you've got to look to the statistics. So we, as the 12J Industry Association of South Africa, last year commissioned a survey which asked our members where they have invested money, into what sectors and what they've done from a job creation perspective. We were very pleased to find out that of the 10,500 jobs that I've just mentioned, about 75% of them were for previously disadvantaged individuals, and about 25% of the jobs that have been created were in previously rural or in rural outlying areas. So to talk about the economic effects, and we can talk about the tax break in a moment if you'd like, and what investors get from it, but from an economic perspective, we're creating jobs. You are having equity capital invested into small businesses on at least a 5-year basis, which is extremely powerful. But at the same time, we're actually creating tax, because remember, you're making an investment into a small business. And if that business is successful and that business grows, that business in turn will pay tax to the fiscus. So the way I think of 12Js, it's the ultimate win-win for South Africa. We create jobs, we stimulate SMMEs, and ultimately what National Treasury and the President is doing is they're making an investment today in the collection of higher future tax revenues going forward.
We'll leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. Dino Zuccollo for joining us.